Hello. Is this working? I think it's working. Hello, welcome to Elisava. Welcome to this fifth edition or fifth event of the Beyond Sessions by the MDRAI series. I'm Andres Colmenares, Director of the Master in Design for Responsible AI. Yeah, thanks for those of you in the room, welcome. And for those of you watching the live stream or the recording, thanks for spending some time with us to learn a bit about data, AI, and data and AI narratives from two very special guests that not so long ago were on the other side as students of two other masters in Elisava. You will learn a bit more about each of them in the next hour or so. So I will just briefly introduce our guests today. Leticia Poza, who was, how many years ago was your 3 years? Like 3 years ago, you were doing this master in data and design. And Kasia Kaminska, who also, was it 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, was doing the master in strategic design in complexity. So today we're going to learn about their current work, very much at this intersection of that I just said, data, AI, storytelling, we will have the two. First, we will learn from Leticia, then from Kasia, and then we will have a Q&A. So that's the plan. If for people in the live stream, if you have questions, keep dropping them in the chat. We will share them here. And we're ready, right? So welcome to the stage, Leticia.
Sure. Is this close enough? Yes. Oops. Hi, everyone. I hope not to bore you with data. I hope to try to make it interesting and try to make it to the topic. Are we all connected somehow to design? So just so I understand. Yes? Good. Okay. So then it makes sense. So my name is Leticia. And I did the data and design masters here, but before that I used to work in data culture implementation. It is just as boring as it sounds. I come from business, and because I come from business, I've worked in corporate my whole life. But I have also worked in many other things. I now own a studio, but before that, as I said, I did some of the big data dashboards and visualizations in big corporations. I come from Brazil, but I have been living in Spain for the last 4 years. And then eventually I realized that I didn't just wanted to do the part where I connected internal and big corporations and big organizations with data teams, so learn how to use the data and how to leverage that. But there was also a lot of space for me to understand how to do that outside of the corporate world. So I started working in health. So some of the examples I'm going to show you are in health, because most of the time, that's what I worked with. I worked exactly the other opposite of the end, which is helping people that know a lot about data, how to communicate that and how to design that for general public. So people that have absolutely no idea what data is and how to use it. And that sometimes we think it's like people like us, but sometimes it's actually policymakers and people that are making decisions about our lives because they are not data literate. So they don't know how to read, interpret, and represent data. So the name of my company is called Odd, and we do a bunch of cool stuff. We also do a bunch of data design and visualization. You're going to see a lot of examples. And we try to push a little bit the limits of what is possible to do with the technology that we have, but also try to push the limits on how we can interpret and organize information so people can maybe have a different sense of what that is and how it can be. So I can say that data can be cool if you actually have the right tools and the right people to work with it. And we like to say that we like to make data unforgettable, and that means that we deliver data through visualizations, dashboards, reports, and of course, AI tools. I'm going to talk more about data, and at the end, I'm going to connect with AI. But I'm pretty sure that Asha will take it forward and lead you on AI and narratives. So why do we visualize data? We visualize data for a bunch of reasons, but mostly because when people are presented with data, visualization and not just text about data, they have a tendency on believing more on what you're saying. So there are multiple studies that show that if you show people, for example, Republicans, which are people that not necessarily believe that the world is actually getting warmer, something that combines both text and graphics, they have a tendency to believe less in the fact that, for example, global warming or the temperature is decreasing or staying the same. So there are a lot of studies that tell you that when we pair and when we organize information with something visual, there's a higher chance that you will perceive that as something that you can believe in, or you're going to believe that that is true. Now, I'm not saying that that's true for everyone and everything, because we have misrepresentation and we have misleading data, of course. It is if you believe the person that's telling you or the source that's telling you, because content bubbles, Instagram, all of those other things that we already know, right? But there's also a lot of other studies in data visualization, which is data design, as we call it, that actually can make data a little bit more tricky and not make you want to do what you want. But before I get there, just so you understand, we work a lot with survey data. So survey data is data that we collect on people, and we try to make it into interesting design in different ways. So we have been working and communicating data in things that can be static, but sometimes also interactive. And you can also work with data, for example, to transform tools and methodologies to improve team adoption or how people can consume information. So this is an example of a project that we did for Unilever, where we built a tool to help them understand where their products are placed, and not just that, but also where the spaces where their products are not placed and where they still have space to explore. So saturated and unsaturated markets, as we call it, and you can deep dive. So it's an online and available tool for their team, internal tool. But what we do is we go from data, so research, survey, databases, information, and complex concepts, to trying to get what is untangible, so desires, dreams, intentions, biases, beliefs, into things that are tangible and people can actually understand or try to understand, right? So we go through analysis, discoveries, visualizations, interfaces, stories sometimes, experiences, to try to get to better, unforgettable endings, which we hope are better decisions, we hope are better conversations around data and answers or ideation. But when I present all of that, people say, but what the actual fuck, like what is it that you do? And then I show the work and they're like, oh, that's interesting, so you make charts pretty. I'm like, sure, that's one of the things we do. Or if you want to be more political, you can say that we make charts more appealing, engaging, or aesthetically pleasing, right? And that's part of the story, for sure. But there's a part of the story that is not told, usually. And there's a lot of work behind just making things pretty, because pretty things can actually kill you. And I can prove that. So, a little bit of backstory on my big country. My big country, we say continental wonders, but continental problems, right? So Brazil is huge, as we all know, 5th biggest country in the world. And there's something that we still have as a big problem, which is also something that is trying to be tackled by the SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals, which is try to reduce maternal mortality. Maternal mortality are mothers that are pregnant and then die in the process of giving birth, usually, or a little bit before that, or after. And actually, what most people don't know is that maternal mortality is a rare event. What does that mean? Is that in some cases, it's really hard for you to identify when it's going to happen. So let's imagine here that you are presented with this chart, which for you may not be beautiful, but believe me and trust me, this is way more beautiful than any other chart I've ever seen in any policy agency or space. And I show you this chart and I tell you that you are, for example, from this small town here that is white, and you don't have any maternal mortality. And you're like, great. actually, like, I must be doing amazing, actually, because I don't have any maternal mortality. So you might assume from a chart like this, saying that 43% of the 5,700 municipalities have no maternal mortality between the years of 2012 and 2023. But you might actually be misleading, because this here is not true. You may believe that, oh, sweet, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. But the truth is that maternal mortality during the pandemic actually increased a lot due to indirect causes, due to COVID. So these were, no. These were causes, let's see. Nope. Okay, good. No touching. So actually, we had a lot of cases that went up, and if you boil it down, or if you break it down, you will see that some of them are due to obstetric causes, which means they are directly related to how you're treating them during the moment that they are pregnant, but some were not. And this was being overlooked somehow. But more than that, one of the things that we don't understand is that actually maternal mortality, or maternal death, is not an isolated event. It is a series of elements and things that happen throughout a mother's life and throughout her pregnancy that might lead to death causes. And this is something that can start with her socioeconomic conditions, to access to reproductive planning and prevention, to prenatal care, to childbirth care, to then childbirth conditions, and then finally it can lead to death. So if I am not looking at all of these other elements here, and I'm only looking at that chart that I showed you, I might not be treating that. And actually, if we look at the data from those places that have maternal mortality, they don't have more maternal mortality after, because they understand and they learn what is necessary to be put in place. So the places that are most in risk are the ones that have never had a maternal mortality in the first place. So this is one of the things that we need to talk about, is the lack of data. The lack of data, or the lack of a point specifically in your chart, may be more dangerous than the presence of it, because you're not aware that that can happen. Now let's imagine that in the setting of AI. If I have a data set, and if I have information on maternal mortality, and that is what I am uploading to an AI system, and I ask questions, and it's going to answer that, no, your state is okay because you don't have any maternal mortality, I may believe in that answer. But I don't have anyone telling me that actually the problem is all of the other factors that are behind it. So that is the first problem that I see when we talk about AI, because everything that you have with data, when you have AI, is 100% or way worse, because you're scaling that, or you're putting that into different perspectives and different scale. Second example, Caucasian, rich, and more educated women are more likely to choose cesareans over vaginal birth compared to other demographics. So, in Brazil, we have something called a cesarean epidemic. More than 50% of our births in Brazil are C-sections. And that is an issue, because the recommended amount for WHO is actually under 15%. So we are way above that line and way above that limit. So if we look at a chart, this is actually one of my master's projects. So if we look at a chart organizing that information, and this is a more complex infographic, you will see, for example, this is public health, this is private, this is cesarean private, this is cesarean in public. And then you have here women, so we have white, yellow, we call, in Brazil, you have the same one for, I think that you would call women of color, all of these other ones, black and indigenous. And then you can see, for example, that cesarean in private is the biggest one that we have, right? So white women in private health and have more cesareans than any other. Now let's put ourselves into our social demographic and economical situation. Which are the most influential people in Brazil still to date? Are they indigenous women? No, it's white women. we are still, like Caucasian women, are still more present in social media. They still talk more on social media about their practices. So a woman or someone may look at this chart and say, oh, this is the best choice. Because if these women that are more educated or know or have the best doctors at their disposal are doing this, then maybe this is the best choice that I have. So sometimes showing a demographic over another one and saying that that demographic has made a choice can actually mislead other demographics that are less educated or have less information to believe that that's true. But that is not true, because if you look back at the chart, you will see that there's another information below that is days lost. So this is the line that we say that it's 39 weeks is where a baby should be born. That is not necessarily true, right? But this is when a baby should be born. And then what happens is every time that a baby goes a little bit over that line, they immediately want to cut that off. They want to take it off because it's like it's going over. It shouldn't go over that time. But that is not true. Like science is showing us that you can actually have a 43-week-year-old pregnancy and you're more than fine. Actually, your baby is going to be better developed. So what we wanted to show here is that actually these women here are losing more days than others, which means that you're up to 12 days less. They're spending 12 days less in the womb than they should. And that can lead to health causes like asthma and many other things in life, because lungs are the last thing that we develop that we're not even taking into consideration. I make a really non-political joke here that shouldn't be recorded, but I say that finally we're going to have a little bit of like other demographics are having a little bit of advantage over white women because their children are going to be less developed, but let's not say that out loud. So, and then finally the last one, which is one in the US. This is a chart that shows early deaths from heart diseases. So this is Asian, Black, Hispanic, and white people. And then how many younger adults died in each year from heart diseases. So it's the national average that you have here for US adults from 15 to 64 years old. And what happens when you show, and this is a very nice paper from Ali Holder, a friend of mine, and he did a study showing this chart here to a lot of people. Because we're using the average here, a lot of people assume that this is because of specific things that are not true. Because sometimes when we see charts and we have biases towards certain demographics, or we have certain beliefs towards some demographics, we may attribute that result to certain causes that are beyond their control and to the individual. So for example, some of the things that people say when they see this chart is that Black people don't take care of themselves, or it's the genetic. It's because they're more prone to it. And these are actual answers. He interviewed 400 people and he got different answers, but they were all around blaming the individual. When this year were things just like the one that we were talking about, maternal mortality, but instead of being a rare event, it's actually a systemic problem. So it's not because these people are more prone to it, it's because they are in worse conditions. And those worse conditions are to any other systemic issues that are around the country and that should be attributed to the government or to how they are treated or to access to healthcare, which we know that it's not free in the US, for example. So there are problems to the way that we show information. And one of the things that we need to take into account is that public health relies on influence and relies on the way that we show information to make things work. And not just public health, actually behavioral change relies on these issues and relies on influence to make things work. I can give you a personal example of how people in general behave depending on the type of information you show them. So for example, you know those sunscreens analysis that you do, that you show how a person's face is based on UV light? So you show different types of like where their face is more affected or not. The intention of that is getting people to wear sunscreen. But if people have really good skin, they stop wearing sunscreen altogether because they believe they don't need it. So it has an opposite effect of what we're expecting for, just because we made specific design choices on what we want to show. And then, if you think about it, everything that you have in your pocket right now has data, and everything that you use, including your Tinder, for example. And what you perceive and the end thing that you usually see is only the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's so many decisions that are made in this hidden area here. So interfaces, the data solution, and the data itself that you're collecting. And sometimes you don't stop to think about it. Because there's this whole process that goes from problem framing, data wrangling, engineering, visualizing, designing, programming, testing and validating, and then finally deploying and delivering to the final user. So all of these choices and all of these designs are being made for you. And you have also an opportunity to influence them. And I'm going to give you a few examples of what are those choices, but it's something that I've already told the team here, but you haven't seen it. How do you actually make a data solution, and what are the elements of a data visualization or a data solution, which can be, for example, a dashboard or Tinder. Tinder is a data solution, if you think about it, because it's matching people according to a specific rating, which is the index it gives to you. So we're going to bake a data product. Imagine that you're going to a party, and you're going to a sister's birthday party. She's 5 years old, and she loves unicorns, right? So you were tasked with baking a cake for her. To bake this cake, you have selected a few ingredients. You can have flour, you can have eggs, milk, you can have sugar. You can make many different things with these ingredients, right? This is what your data has. Your data are your ingredients. So your data determines what you can and what you cannot do. And depending on the type of your data, you can make something more simple or more complex. You can make something that it's a little bit more with a lot of information or not. Remember the rare events that we talked about? So if I don't have data on all of their socioeconomical development and things that mothers have, I'm not going to be able to analyze that, right? And then the second thing is how you bake that, or what is the recipe that you're using. That is what we call an analytical solution. An analytical solution can be something very simple, again, or something very complex. It can be an algorithm, or it can be an AI. But it will depend also on the type of skill that you have when you are developing it. Let's say that you are a great cook, and then you can make layered cake, or you can make, I don't know, you know how to use a professional oven. It will be very different, the type of cake you will deliver, than someone else that doesn't. So that is also something you need to take into account. The shape of the food is the format that you're delivering. Is it going to be a visualization that's going to be digital? Is it going to be something that you will deliver on a mobile, on your phone? Or is it something that you will put on a wall? Because if you think about it, a visualization, the ones that we saw, we can print it, we can make it digital, and we can even make it mixed reality in, I don't know, using it in a VR, for example. You can do that too, right? So the shape of your food will determine that. And then finally, where you're showing it is the media. So if you put it in the center of the table and invite everyone in, they're going to eat it. If you leave it in the kitchen, no one is going to see it. So also where you show your information and where you take it, it's going to make a huge difference on the adoption of it. So your data product should tailor to someone, in this case, who your sister's daughter, for example, and she loves unicorns. So let's say you're making something unicorn-like. But one of the things that we learned through this process is that it's not just that. It's actually also a community behind it. Let's say that one of the children has, I don't know, is lactose intolerant. Will we make the same cake, or will you make a different cake? So all of these things here are actually design choices. They are not tech choices necessarily. They are things that we discuss and we decide during the process, because it's a team effort. And we talked about this during class, but we have a framework for it. So we break this down into different elements so we can tackle this problem a little bit more and know who we're talking to and why we are talking to that person in that way. So we can decide what's the best way for us to visualize it. So we have a framework for us to build algorithms, for us to build visualizations, and for us to build even AI. Because a data solution can be any of those things. It actually depends on the user that you have. Because designing a data product or a data solution, and that's not getting to the whole discussion of what a product is, because we're going to be here forever, is actually a lot of it your user's decision. So all of those elements there are defined by your user. And all of these here are tech, but these are from the business or from the organization. So this is why I usually say that actually tech is only 30% of the job. Everything else is design and the definition of design. So we have a lot of place into influences how these things go out and how we perceive and organize information and data. And it is a combination of different competences. It goes from data storytelling to UX and UI, data visualization. Yes, there is development, but there's more information design, analysis, statistics, and project management than it is tech itself. You can see that I'm trying to invite all of you into the data visualization area and trying to convince you that there's space for you there, right? I'm getting to the end. So I would say that pretty doesn't cut it. Like, I don't think that we just make pretty charts. I think we make much more than that, because I believe that design influences and design design in charts actually is not something that is, it is very political if you think about it. And what we actually do is try to make it accessible, equitable, visual, effective, insightful, impact-driven, and actionable. Because if there's no action, why am I even doing this, honestly? And even good data, when it is presented in a bad way, can lead to bad conclusions. So we can misread the data, we can misattribute. So for example, mistaking correlation and causality, which is a whole different thing. We can have misbeliefs on it and have harmful stereotypes. We can have motivated reasoning behind it. And sometimes we're just not intelligent in that topic and we're all morons, and we have to understand that we have no idea what we're talking about. But we have this thing that we want sometimes to justify what's behind the data without knowing what's actually in it and without asking questions. So when we say that we go from data to action, we go through all of those steps to get there, because data design choices, they impact the way we perceive information, drive conversation, and potentially, if we're lucky, change behaviors. So charts are not passive, in my opinion. By choosing to visualize something like inequality, for example, as we were seeing, it can take an active role in shaping it. And I can prove it. I'm going to show a 2-minute video. And I want you to just take a look at this video and tell me what you feel and how you feel about it. It has no audio, it's just like background noise. Yeah, I'm just gonna show you what it is. What are we seeing? Did anyone create a story in their head? Do you want to share the story? Say it. Domestic abuse, okay. What else? Don't be shy. Come on, say it. We are all thinking it. No? If you had to put adjectives to what you were saying, what would these adjectives be? Hierarchical, power, oppressive. Okay. You basically saw triangles and dots. That's it. It was random. This is a study from 1947. and they analyze how people perceive different things based on movement. There's no sound, there's no story, but you all kind of created a story in your head, just because of the way it was designed and just because of the way it was presented to you. So even though we don't want to, we put meaning into forms and figures. Even though we don't want to, and we're like, this is crazy, I didn't see anything. I am attributing a story to something that I have no idea what's behind it, based on my experiences, based on my beliefs, and based on all of the bias that we have. So now let's think of that into design. Design-wise, what does that mean? Is that, yes, we can work with data, we can use tech as an enabler, but design should really guide our work, because when we're talking about AI, we have to understand that we will input our biases into it. We will not interpret or will miss data. And missing data sometimes can actually kill people, as we saw in the first example that I showed with mothers. If I don't have that data in, it's not going to attribute it. It's not clear or visible how accurate what we're saying is. So a lot of the things that are being shown to you don't necessarily tell you how probable that is, on how accurate that is, or how certain that AI is. You only know the answer. And finally, if we are always looking at an average, because we were talking about this before, it is an average of everything that is available, how we will propose and how we understand different things or things that go out of the norm. So these are very important things for us to keep in mind when we are designing not just data solutions, but also interpreting results from AI, especially in data scenarios, because it can actually influence how we behave and how other people behave, because we're all communicators. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope I convince you to work in data visualization.
Okay, hello, it's working. My name is Kasia, and I'm going to talk about AI narratives. So what stories we tell ourselves about technology. And when I get excited about a topic, my mom tells me I talk too fast. So if I do, please let me know, and I'll try to slow down. So the first question is like, why are we talking about narratives today, narratives about technology? It's because first, we hear that we're going to go to the moon, as Kennedy said at the beginning of the 60s, and then it happens, right? We first see how AI is represented as Her by Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her, or by HAL 9000 in Space Odyssey. And then we actually create those kind of robots or formats of artificial intelligence. But also what's interesting here is that some technologies are not really talked about that much, like smartphones or the cloud as they enter, but they change our lives so much. And then the internet and AI are just talked about and like discussed everywhere, all the time. So that's why me and another Kasia decided to think about and talk about and research why what is there in AI and what are the narratives that we tell ourselves about AI. And we've been working in tech for the past decades, and we've seen how this industry, well, thinks about the speed the most. And the old Facebook motto was move fast, break things. Yeah, thank you. Or that you should ask for forgiveness, not for permission, right? So we feel that this industry is focused so much on speed that it's not really worried about the consequences, or it doesn't really take the time to reflect on the technology and the consequences of that technology. And we're Jutro Lab. Jutro means tomorrow in Polish. And so yeah, I'm Polish, where we both are. So the lab is aimed to thinking about what we're doing today and what are the consequences of those actions tomorrow. And Kasia on the right is a social scientist by training, and she is a UX designer, product designer, and design strategist. She has 20 years of experience and is really smart and cool. And I've been working in tech as a business development manager, as process designer, and futures thinking recently. So that's what we're all about. And today I'm going to talk about the AI narratives. So maybe to say what our working definitions of those are. So a narrative is a meta story, a set of stories that show how we perceive a certain phenomena. And well, AI here is really what people agree AI is. I know it sounds maybe a bit strange, but we wanted to kind of source what people think about AI. So we didn't want to put a definition, but obviously it's all it's a tool, it's a technology, it's a field. There are so many other different ways of putting it. So yeah, we kept it a bit vague to be able to search what people think and talk about it. So I want to show you a bit of the process of uncovering those narratives. It was humans and AI. So the first thing we did as humans, we sourced data. And this data was mainly written. There were some videos, but basically there were reports. There were LinkedIn posts. There were articles, video. My reflection piece from the masters. Jana, do you recognize it? So many different pieces of information, written information, or opinions, really. And we sourced 50 of those, and then we decided to structure it. So this is our. We made this up, this matrix or this structure here, but it's inspired by Bruno Latour's action network theory and by feminist futures. So basically, this part is from Bruno Latour. So we organize this into statements, debates, so where people are not agreeing with each other, actors and networks. We didn't do that much of this, to be honest. And then we also organized it to see what those pieces were about, whether they were about the individual, about the community, society, technology, economy, or planet. Because, well, we as individuals, we live in a community which lives, in society, which is served by or governed by a technology, blah, 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 blah. So basically to look at it, that is a continuum, because there are other frameworks and futures thinking that are much more partitioned, where people look at society and and technology and environment, but they're just spread out. And here we wanted to show that it's one lives in the other. And then we We did prompt engineering, basically parsing each text through AI, through ChatGPT, like enterprise version. And the prompt was more or less like a copy of the other Kasia. So imagine you're a social scientist with this and this background, and you're gonna do like a semantic analysis tasks. And your task is to unveil the narratives that are hidden in the text. And it had low temperature, which meant it shouldn't hallucinate and should really focus on the text at hand. And yeah, each text was done separately, which, I mean, today you could use probably Notebook ML and upload all of those sources at once and ask straight away. But on the other hand, I think a lot of nuances would be lost if you do it like in a batch. And then Kasia was also discussing with chat, and refining and asking for more details or rephrasing or just going deeper into that. And then we did a lot of human curation and insight, and a lot of discussions how to organize this, because we had, I don't know, probably like 50 narratives that were there, but some of them were really similar or were a bit boring, to be honest, or they were somehow repetitive, and we tried to organize them and give meaning to the inputs to the outputs we got. So yeah, let's look at the narratives. But before we do, I want you to take a piece of paper or like digital paper or your phone, whatever, and write down what AI is for you, or what's the image of AI you have in your head. What does AI mean to you? Andres, you too. Jana, you too. I don't know your name, so everyone. It can be one sentence or two, not an essay. Yeah, it can be just basically what AI is it to you. Last words to the essays. So I'll ask you a bit later, like if you would like to share, and what does AI mean to you? I hope it doesn't mean that. That's one of my favorite artworks that follows me throughout my professional career. It once hung in my office. So every day I came there was like, we're all gonna die. Well, it's Joan Cornella from Barcelona, actually. really recommend his work. But I hope it's not that. We're not all, I mean, we're all gonna die, but like, I hope it's not because of AI, or that you don't think that. But another of those like very well-known narratives are like, AI will take away my job. Or the more positive is like, AI will take care of us. We'll do everything. We'll take care of the health and climate and whatnot, right? So some of it is very, very fear-based, and some of it is very, very hope-based. But let's look beyond this binary. We organized the narratives, and we chose 20. I'm not going to show you 20 because that would be overwhelming. But I'm going to show you a few that some of them might be very familiar. Some of them might be, oh, this is strange or interesting. And the first ones are from this kind of basket, which is AI as technological evolution or revolution. And we have the first one, which is like AI as the highest human accomplishment. There are some technologists that say it's the highest thing that we've ever achieved. And Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Alphabet, said that it's more profound technology than fire or electricity. Well, I wouldn't agree, but some people really perceive it as the highest form of our intelligence and progress and whatever we can work on. Then it's like AI development is a moral obligation, which one of the very well-known technologists said. I don't remember his name now, obviously, but basically it's framed as AI development is a moral duty to future generations, because if we can use AI to solve all those problems, then obviously we have to do it. Which first is makes an assumption that if we stop it or we maybe criticize it, that we might be immoral. That's first. And second, there was a research about how much AI, like investment in AI, was for profit and how much was for impact. And that's less than 1% is for impact. So we're saying it is going to solve all those beautiful problems, the big ones, the health and inequalities and whatnot. But actually, it's more business optimization and other beautiful capitalistic things. And the third one, which is used by the states a lot, in the sense of United States, but also just countries, that developing AI is a race and we have to go as fast as possible. And it also shows that we have to be fast and we don't have the time to stop and think. We need to rush because other countries are ahead. So it reminds me of the space race, exactly, or arms race, right? So like always going and breaking rules, breaking maybe policies or scrapping any policies that are good for humanity, for society, just because we need to have a strategic advantage. So that was more about like the development of AI and working on it. Then there's like the part of AI and human dynamics that is, you probably have seen many of those. It's like AI is a productivity tool, so something that will save us time, increase productivity, and improve task management. It's also one of those narratives that on one end calms us down, because we can say, oh, it's just a tool, a new tool. I have to just learn it and it's going to be all fine. And on the other hand, it can also be like, okay, it's a productivity tool. What if I don't learn it? What if I'm, I don't know, stupid and I can't grasp it? Then I might not be productive and I might be let go. So there might be also fear related to that. Then the next one is this like, AI accompanies me to work and home and makes my life easier. it reminds me of like a sweet robot that, you know, follows you around the house, or her from her, that is your lover or whatnot. That basically you can outsource everything to AI. So it can be your pal and your therapist, and you don't have to leave the house. It's beautiful, but also quite scary, isn't it? Like, it can replace everything. And I have quite a lot of techie, geeky friends that say that, you know, they've been talking to ChatGPT about their problems and they're feeling so much better. And I said, we can always hang out if you need to talk, you know, it's humans are still available. And then the last one's like AI will become your boss, basically, right? So that there's this assumption that the like quantitative data analysis is king. And Leticia was talking about it as well, right? Wherever there's data and like the data is always correct, is always right. Well, depending how you show it, what kind of bias it has, how complete it is, etc. So, but there's so much pressure on data collection, but also believing this data. There is always, companies, governments, like show me the data, and like that's how we make a decision. There's an assumption as well that any decision can be taken if there's enough data, and it's going to be a good one. And AI is already in some places like a boss to humans. When you have, for example, like when people have to tag content on Facebook or Instagram as, you know, sexual violation or whatnot, so we don't see it. They're governed by an algorithm basically, and they're like doing stuff that the algorithm can't do, but it's, yeah, they're just being given this this job and paid very little, because the algorithm is the king basically. And then we have AI and promises, which is that AI provides or will provide economic boost. Again, it's very strategic for states, for countries, and it's gonna make this next revolution here. Obviously, it has some or a lot of advantages, but you know, if we cut out a lot of costs from corporates, basically we optimize, so we let people go. The economic boost might be spread very unevenly throughout the societies. So it's again seen from the state position or corporate position, or entrepreneurs, the big entrepreneurs position, but not from the society level. And then we have also another one that's like AI will become omnipotent, right? It will be the digital god. And there is a quote here: as for God, if he doesn't exist, or she, or they, then why not just create him? This is what AGI is supposed to be, an all-knowing and all-powerful entity capable of solving all of our problems and creating utopia. It sounds like a wet dream from Silicon Valley, doesn't it? And we're being told that this can happen and it is coming, and it's like a promise that we will have AGI will solve everything. So that's one of those stories that we hear. And I would like to look at what you wrote before, because this is your narrative about AI. Or remind yourself what you wrote, and where would you put yourself? I'm gonna show you some dimensions that you can look at those narratives. So some of the narratives I showed you before, but also the ones that you have on your phones or on your notebooks is, you know, there might be exciting opportunities, or there might be source of anxiety, or they might be somewhere here. Some for you, you might have been thinking about, okay, I will have agency as a human, or will I be submissive to AI? And obviously you can also think about it's like it's not that relevant. It's another tool, it's another layer of applications. It's something simple. Or you can think of it as like proof of human progress. It's, wow, this is the big shit. And I wonder where you are with yours. What you think, like what your stories say. On which side are you? Anyone wants to share?
data eating machine for optimization. A tool cannot be that cannot be unnoticed. It is shaped real life. And for my visualization,
Human agency. Are you excited or are you anxious about it?
I think a little bit towards anxiety sometimes. I think it is relevant. It's not the ultimate proof of human progress. I think lacking a lot of human intelligence.
Or tacit knowledge. Yeah, Anna's master thesis was about tacit knowledge, so I knew where she was going.
human intelligence and human knowledge. So yeah, I think overall a little bit here and there. Yeah.
Perfect. Leticia, do you want to share?
Oh, okay, there you go. I wrote that I like to think it's a computer trying to imitate human thought or human behavior. We talked about this in class today. So I would say that I'm more on the human agency side of things. I also put that for me, it's very much data, numbers, things like that. That's what I imagine when I think of it. I think of something abstract. I don't think it's something. I don't think of a figure or some nothing that relates to humans. I think very much machine, but machine numbers. So I would say that for me, it is. I'm very much in the middle of source of anxiety and exciting opportunity because I think it can be both. So I think I'm very much in the middle. And in terms of proof of human progress or skepticism, I think that I'm a little bit more to the side of human progress because I think that if put to good use and if put to in the hands of people that can use this for something like disseminating and decentralizing information, that can be a really good thing. But it also is very much related to the top one and to the middle one. So all of them go hand in hand for me. I don't think that there's like, they all connect somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're more hopeful, I guess.
Not, I'm going to cry. So, anyone else?
Anyone else wants to share? Thank you.
Hello, Jenny from Masters of Design for Responsible AI. I like the fact that AI makes a story about the future and gives us a chance to reform what could be technology, as it's not really right now a form that is helping the world. So I see it as an exciting opportunity, but I think the anxiety is acknowledged. Sorry to say it's hard to polarize, because I feel there, especially when reforming systems like specifically world technology systems and entire like infrastructures and so on, the potential has to come from somewhere. So I am into hope, critical hope, and there is a space for this. Perhaps it's like a Z or something that runs through this shaped.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that, you can be here on Monday and on Tuesday you're like, okay, I'm super excited, and then I'm coming back to anxiety because something happened or there's like news about it, right? So, Anders, you want to share yours? Yeah.
For me, AI are narratives. So it will be in what we are seeing is the rectangle that encompasses all of these stories happening at the same time. Some of them louder because of who is, and even and very the opposite of neutral, because I think the human agency that billionaires have, they are still humans, right? They have a lot of agency, and they are applying that agency, applying submission under millions of humans, and at the same time that it can, these narratives are about human progress. There's also a lot of hype and snake oil, and so and it's all of it. It's AI, and for me it's it will continue being stories with intention, but not. I mean, stories based on let's say computational, planetary computation in culture that is driven by data in a number of things, right? That are reality and physical and material, but very much like woven together into stories and narratives.
You chose the like systemic view of, like, as you said, like there are people who have agency here, but there are also people who are submissive to the agency of those people, basically, right? So thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to share that, you can then put those you can have a lot of those dimensions or those lines, and then put them into another matrix and be like, okay, so where are the stories? There was like, we're skeptical and dominant, right? Like, where do we put those stories and your stories as well? You can go and analyze it in very different ways and play with it. Just have fun with that. And for me, I wanted to ask you at the end about your narrative, whether you want to keep it as it is, or maybe you want to change it, how you think about AI, so it's easier for you, or it works for you better, or it makes your work, your projects, I don't know, more interesting, or it makes you more hopeful. So that's why I invited you to write down this story, so you can have a look at it now and think about it, whether you want to continue with that narrative, whether it's useful for you, or maybe you want to adjust it a bit. So that's it from me today.
Maybe with the two of you, or you two, you're on the stage, and now we can open the floor for questions, also comments. We have, let me check the time. Yeah, we have time for any questions for Leticia. I will, so 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Hear me? I hope so. Hi, I'm Sophia. It's so fun to see this mixture because we are the ones studying data design, but we're also tapping into this. We did a project about AGI, essentially, about the narratives about AGI and what all the different like news sources, papers, the tech bros, what they say, and it's like a similar analysis, not as deep, but like very fun. So kind of I love the mixture of the both of them, and that's kind of also what I'm doing with my master's thesis. So I'm like maybe already sick of it a bit. But what my question is, I mean, you're all like really very deep in this. Like how, like it's always very hard to say like this is my story, this is my narrative. Like what is your nuanced answer to giving a narrative around AI?
That's a very good question. I would say what Andres kind of said is like AI is our stories, and they are there are really so many of them, and I think the beauty or also the scary part is that you can contain all of them at once in you. So you can be like, okay, so is it gonna kill us? Is it gonna take away my job? Is it something that can give me a lot of agency and hope and make me more powerful as an individual to act in, you know, the way I believe is just for the society, etc. So I would say you can also look at it from like what is the more dominant narrative, and think and try to challenge. Thank you, Ayana. Try to challenge it, or think about like what we were trying to research is also like what are the narratives that are missing, obviously from our perspective, right? What is not being heard? Like who is not being heard? Who is posing those narratives? Who's pushing those, right? So I don't know whether that answers, but this is the...
No, it makes a lot of sense because essentially I feel like there's these two potent narratives that we've also been talking about in the course, which is one, this inevitability, and the other, the uncertainty about it. But like there's this third narrative missing, like the one that's silent, the one that's quieter, the one that's the people researching, the people questioning it more. I don't know. And I feel like you only hear the loud voices anymore. Like you don't hear the silent voices about it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And this is like also that, yeah, we took this like from, you know, people LinkedIn posts or articles and stuff. So like you can really see that those narratives, I mean, there are many of them, but still they come back to those main ones about the power, as you said, like it's inevitable, obviously, but it's also like what this inevitability means. Oh, yeah, taking our jobs and like the big tech taking over, basically, right? So, and humans becoming the slaves, basically, of technology. Yeah. So for me, like my wish is to actually plant or like invite people to plant those other more alternative narratives about it.
Very visual narrative.
So one of the things that changed my perspective on it a lot, and this is one of the reasons why I am not so doomsday believer anymore, is because I have been working with data from interviews made with people, that there's a lot of ways in which it's being used on a day-to-day basis, that it's neither harmful nor doomsday thing, and it's just facilitating the way that people live and making it easier for them to access certain things that they couldn't before, like courses, information. And for them, it's enough, the type of information that they are getting. I know that as in a school, in a university, at a university, we want to go deeper into subjects, but we forget that sometimes having enough information is enough. And I think that that is something that I was not aware of. But one of the things is that 90% of the people, we can say that 90% of the people in Brazil that have access to digital things are already using AI. And I think that the problem is that they don't know what it means, but they are already using it. So I am a little bit torn in between those things, because I can also see multiple realities of it being applied, and especially coming from a country that has so many people that don't have opportunities, knowing that for some people that can be And there are so many stories that are like successful stories. So there's the story of this person that is an older man. He's already retired. He's 70 years old. And he asked ChatGPT, what can I do with 70 years old and no degree to get more money? And then ChatGPT gave him like 10 options. He chose one of them. And he did a course on real estate. And he sold like 2 apartments. So it's like one of those things that you don't even imagine that can happen. So there are many other stories of people that are using it for themselves and for good in a way. So I think I became a little bit more optimistic that maybe there is a space for people to take and use it as they want, you know? So I would also look into surveys that have been conducted regionally and data from what people are doing and saying, not just what the media is showing, from specific agencies or specific survey-based, like research-based studies. Because I think that there's more information and those silent things are there and we're not looking at them.
Yes, thank you.
I can share the data. I have all of the data from the survey if you want, but it's very Brazil specific, but I think it can be applied to many other countries too.
Oh, hi, I'm Effie. I'm from the Critical and Contextual Design Masters. And I use AI like casually, not as much in my research, but for my thesis, I'm working on perception, which I feel like is really related to narrative. And I guess I'm also interested in how do you change narrative, specifically when you were talking about the data design and speaking to specific users or people who interact with them. How do you change, or how do you decide who you're speaking to when you're changing certain narratives, especially when there's so many different perspectives on AI? I know that's kind of a big question.
On AI specifically, you want to know?
Yes, I feel like it can apply to a lot of things.
I understand the question. How do you understand who you're talking to when you're talking about AI specifically, and then how do you assess that? Is that what you're asking? Okay. So it depends on the context of what you're working with, but usually for us, the most important person is, there are 2 people that are very important in any scenario when you're talking about influence and when you're talking about perceptions. One of them is the decider. So who is the decision maker? So who is the person that's deciding for that? So whether it is implementing, whether it is using, whether it is, I don't know, just accessing, that person is very important. But there's another user, usually, which is the influencer of that person. So I'm going to give you an example, the cesarean case. Actually, we just won an award for a project that we did on C-section. That was, we did it to inform those white women, because we believe we need to make them angry, because they are the only ones that can change the narrative, I think. Because their doctors are not going to have them change the narrative, because the problem is so systemic that you have a lot of people around them telling them that they are wrong if they want to go vaginal birth. So you need to find who is the decision maker in the final, but you also have to find who is influencing them. And in this case are doctors, because they believe that if you schedule it is better, for example. And this happens in many other cases. And sometimes the influencer is not necessarily a person that's going to have the subject expertise, like a doctor, and you believe that they're giving you the best information. But sometimes it's also the person that's showing the information to you because you don't have time for it. So in policymaking, sometimes, and I was telling this to the team, you have a policymaker, municipal, regional, whatever, that is making the final decision, so signing it, but they don't really have time to analyze or look at dashboards or data, so they have someone that is doing that for them. Who is that person, and how is that data being shown? Is it being shown through a report? Is it being shown through a presentation? So you have to make sure that you cater to both. You show the information, or you show, the perception is going to be by both of them, and there's going to be a filter. Someone is going to filter that information before it gets to the final user. So all of those things are things that you need to take into account. If you're talking to a child, for example, they have caretakers, but they also have or an adolescent, their friends are the most important ones. So who is influencing them is really, really big. Even if my parents tell me that I shouldn't do something, I'm probably gonna do it if my friend told me I should. Like, and so I think that there's always a balance in between those. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Sorry, I have to leave in a second. That it's a complicated question, but the idea of visualizing data requires labeling the data, so giving it some kind of concrete context through text. Yeah, the idea of labeling elements of society or situations, narratives, is basically very closely related to metaphors or the development of metaphors. And so in order to create those actors that play the role in the narrative, which play the role in labeling the data that's visualizing the potential to influence change, we're basically a laboratory for metaphorical development. But my thinking is that we're still relating roles, like even the word doctor. You said the doctor has to tell the white woman. That is a label, the doctor. What if we were to relabel him or her, to take away the terms we use to tell our stories, to change the actors, to develop their true place in the story. So he's no longer, or she's no longer a doctor. These are somehow the people that inform women in Brazil to take cesareans in order to make appointments faster, easier, and earn more money, like the word doctor gone, you know? How does that then affect everything? And in terms of AI, we label data, yeah? Visualizing that related to the metaphor of narratives is just a sort of comment, but also a question. Is there any chance we can actually dive into those labels? Is there a potential to do that without breaking, basically breaking the internet? Because we can't take so much language development like that.
That's a topic that has been studied a lot, and I'm going to give you a very direct example of how that influences gender identification and the lack of data or the lack of labels or the need for labels to do that. So how do you gender people and how do you organize, and is that even necessary? And if it is, because there's both sides of it, right? There's the side that wants to be recognized, so non-binary people want to be recognized and want to be seen and want to be viewed, but also at the same time, you are labeling people and people don't want to be labeled. And if you label a lot of trans people, for example, maybe they will be targeted because in some countries they will be targeted. So it's a double sword kind of thing. It's always a problem labeling, but and you have to question yourself whether you're doing it in an equitable and inclusive way. And it's a night-long discussion. I have a very good talk to recommend on this, which is from Emily. Emily is a non-binary person that studies this topic in the US, and they study it with a Urban Institute, which is an institute that does policy specifically in the US, and they have a guideline called No Harm Guide. So how do you diminish or how do you minimize harmful actions by labeling and organizing data in a way that's more equitable, inclusive, and diverse? And it's a huge paper, but it's really good, and I definitely recommend it because, as I said, there's 70% behind it that we don't even see it. And labeling is one part of it. But we sometimes need it in order to be able to verify and visualize those things and give them voice. But some other moments, visualizing them and understanding them, it's actually harmful towards those people. So how do you balance both of them out? And how do you understand when you're favoring a specific group over another one, right? So yeah, I'm absolutely cannot stress this topic enough because it's huge. It goes around accessibility. But I understand where your question is coming from. Like, there is not only there is agency in the act of labeling data. And the way that we do that can change the output and the outcome of what we have completely. So we have to question. Remember that I showed you the example that Pepsi is better than Coke. Is it good or bad? Just labeling what is good or bad is something that defines the whole analysis that you're doing at the end. And it's never related to whoever is analyzing it, in the sense that it is never a definition of something that is unbiased. It's always going to be biased. So what I have to make sure is that I understand the motives and the reasons behind it, so then I can properly assess and properly visualize the information and give the correct assessment of, is this favoring something or not? And what is the reasoning behind this? And why am I doing this? So I think that transparency also goes to the decisions that we make on data. And then that goes back to the thing that we were talking about in class about documents and documentation, that I told you that in your case and in your area, in government, is super important. If something is not replicable and if something is not findable, there's a term for it. It's called fair data. So it's, I have to look for it's an anagram. But it's something that you can, my memory fails me, but it's fair data. I'm gonna get there. There are many people that study how you do that, so you are actually able to understand where it comes from, not just from a data collection point of view, but also from a data organization point of view. Yeah. Let me find what fair means now, because now I can't stop thinking about it. Sorry, I can't go forever.
That's cool, thank you.
Findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So yeah. Sure.
I have many, but I'm also aware of the time. And before we wrap up, where can the people in the room or those watching the live from the recording learn more about, or like reach out, follow your work? Do you want to point to anything on your laptop?
Right there, you have my LinkedIn, basically.
Kasia Kaminska 3.
Yes.
There's the podcast.
Yeah, there's like a small podcast on the project if you want to learn more about it, like where we discuss the methodology and more the outputs, and we go into very deep discussions about our thoughts about this, and I think we get lost in it, but like happy to also learn your thoughts about it. Yeah.
Thank you. And you shared it in the slide, but odd.studio is the
.studio, but you can, it's a Letizia at odd.studio, or Letizia Pozza, like pizza.
But with O. Great. Thank you very much, Kasia, Letizia, and thank you for joining us tonight. This was the last, big applause. This was the last event in this Beyond Sessions by MDRAI series, but all of them have been recorded, and we will release the recordings quite soon. Stay tuned, and thank you.